Hello, everyone, and welcome to NAB 2024 Day 3. I'm Matthias, aka Major VFX on all the different socials. We are showcasing Maxon 1 and how creatives from around the world are working with the tool to put together some of the most amazing things you see on any screen anywhere in the world. To my left, all the way from across the pond, is Andy Needham, who's going to be showcasing the new particles in Cinema 4D. Let's give him a big, warm Maxon welcome.
Thank you. Am I?
Yep, you're good.
Good. Thank you. Thanks everybody, and thanks to Matthias, Lily, Simon, and the whole Maxon team for having me out here. Yeah, my name's Andy Needham. I'm a freelance senior motion designer based in London, yeah, I think I've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to quickly show the reel, and then we'll jump in and talk about some particles. So here we go. Okay. All right, I should also mention that I've been teaching on LinkedIn Learning, which was formerly lynda.com, for like nearly 10 years. And the music on the reel was from my old content manager, David Franz, so thank you to him for letting me use it for the show. And I love teaching, I love forming a deeper understanding of the software I use daily, and just sharing knowledge as well. And on that note, anything I don't get around to kind of finishing and stuff, there's so much to talk about with particles, Cinema 4D particles. I think I had a frame about like a YouTube channel that I'll be like getting off the ground at some point. So I'm sure we'll get to it. But let's talk about what we're here for. So before diving into my main examples and stuff like that, I do want to give a quick sort of something that people probably want to do, like make some particles, but make them appear from nowhere and then make them go away again, you know? And there's various ways of doing this. And I think it's just a good exercise to actually kind of learn the system. It has a very specific order of operations. And I'm going to try and just present a few sort of, workable solutions to just doing this task. I've got this scene here, which I can come back to at some point if we need to, but let me just step through this and we'll go from there. So to begin with, I've made my own particle layout. You'd find particles in the simulate menu here, all the emitters that we have, groups, conditions, and modifiers, how we actually manipulate and make these particles do things. But also the forces are used for making them move, and these things have just been in Cinema 4D for so long. Now they actually have something to play with. So we're going to do that just now. So I'm going to create just a basic shape emitter. You can change the shapes just by dropping down here. We could do it like a circle, for example, and just fire out a constant stream of particles. So if we just press play, it all happens really quickly. It's all being processed on the GPU. So there's other properties that we can do here. And we have like a radius property here. So at the moment, we can't really see the radius of these. That's because this shape emitter doesn't actually control that. Everything is now owned by the particle group. So we can come in here and just draw the radius of these. So we get like a radius, a little circle around here. Now what I want to do is be able to kind of grow these up from nothing, make them travel along a little bit more, and then grow back down. And a way of doing that, you could use math, but that's scary. Or like something simple that we can kind of relate to, which is be like a data mapping. Now, all this is saying is, what property do I need to look at? And then take the values of that and put it onto something else, right? So in this example here, this default thing here we need to give it some a lower and upper limit. So if we just set this to like 100 frames, and what it's going to do now is say, this is position X, move this over like 100 units, and then based on this spline, it's going to kind of move it in and move it out again. So if we just have a look at this and just rewind and play, you see, they're going to curve around. So what it's done is it's kind of flattened everything out, and then it's now pushing everything over and then coming back. So you can kind of see what's going on. We give ourselves some more frames to look at here. You get that exact shape that we've defined in the spline. So you can repeat this, so then it will just keep going. And we'll talk about the next mode in a second. Let's just go back to our task of making these particles scale up and scale down. So we're going to take an age range, which is totally fine, maybe like 30 frames, or maybe like 100 frames, just so we can see it. And we're going to take that age and then map it to the radius. And we want to go from, say, 0 to 1. And we'll just clamp this for now. And I want them to just scale up linearly. So I can just right-click here and just reset this. And this will give me a linear spline. And now what we should be able to see is... when we get to... Because we've got such a long range here. When we get closer to 100 frames... And in fact, I'm going to reduce this down so we're not waiting for so long. Let's do 30. They are scaling up. So we can see this. You don't necessarily need a redshift tag at the moment either. You can just render the particle group. And this might take a little second just to compile the shaders, but you can see we're going from nothing to something, which is cool. Now, this is simply controlling that start range. You could do this. I'll show another method as well. But this is scaling them up. So we'll call this scale up. And let's just make another one, or we'll just duplicate it, and we'll call this scale down. So we'll turn this off. And for now, what we want to do is just choose a frame range, maybe like 100 frames, and we'll go for like 150. And then we just want to take our radius that would have been set to 1 and then scale it down. And we don't need to worry about this because we've remapped our lower, which is now 1, to our upper, which is 0. So we should be able to just see this happen. And they'll come along, and I'll just move over here. Now they're scaling down. Okay, so we just confirmed that with our quick render. So they're scaling down to nothing. How do we mix this up? So there's a certain order of operations here. You'd think that we can sort of scale them up and then scale them down. Let's see if this is going to work for us. So yeah, nothing's happening. We're not getting this scaling up. Now that you're thinking like, okay, well, but I've set everything up right. They work on their own. But this range, particles are going, yeah, 0 to 30, good, scale them up. But this has kind of overwritten everything. So it's thinking, oh, I should be at radius 1. And I'll carry on at that radius until I get to frame 100 and between 150 and scale down. So as far as the particles are concerned, thinks it's doing a good job, but it's not. So what we need to do is just say, in this range, look for this range and do that. And then forget about it. Once this is true, move on to the next one. So we should then be able to come here and rewind. Now scale them up. Now, like I said, the order of operations is important. This still isn't quite right. So we need to just say, do this, because this is happening last. And then look for this and see if this is true. When it's true, forget about it and move and come back. So again, I wanted to point this out because it's like a little gotcha. And it can be kind of finicky, but I think having this control over when you have your start range and end range of doing this is a bit more art directable. I'll show another method, but you can see now we'll have this scaled up, scaled down, render view, press play, and there we have it. We've got a little range of particles there. So this is cool. Now, back to this example, I've enabled these, and you'll also notice I've got some other things going on. What I've got here is a math modifier. And this is just going to say, I'm using a random field. You can set it to a field mode. So we've got this random field to multiply whatever values we have there. So this is going to give us variation in the radius. So if we just press play, we can see that now. So now we have a variety of radii on these particles, which is a bit more pleasing to the eye, and they're still going to scale up and scale down. Now, when you're looking at particles and how many are in your scene, it's interesting. You may want to debug it and sort of figure out how many there are. So just select the particle group, go into point mode, and in here in the HUD you can see we've got 480. That number, even though they're scaling down to nothing, it's just counting up. So it's just counting up. So what I can do is I can say, you know what, the ones that are too small, let's just get rid of those. I don't need them to be processed anymore. So I've got conditions which can then talk to the group. So we're going to say, look, if your age is greater than, well, I've made it like 1, just over a frame, and, so if we enable this, and your radius is less than 0.1, then at that point I want you to kill the particles. Can you see how we stack these things up and have a sort of flow? It's a bit like a kind of visual programming kind of thing of making true or false statements, but this is it's quite an interesting system of doing that. Now you see that we're losing all the tiny ones here and just having like bigger ones. Now you could say, look, make this over greater than 30 frames, because then I know that my scale up property is true. So we'll probably see a few more come along. But anyway, anything that's too small is eventually going to get killed off. And if we click onto our group here, you see that it was over the 700s, over 800. It's now, way more, much smaller. So a few things of doing it there. You could also just do this with math, adding to the value and things like that. But I think for now, these are just a few sort of maybe friendlier methods without getting too nested in conditions and things like that. So we'll dive into the presentation proper now. And I've had a chance to play with this a little bit. So there's a few examples here. And like I said, I won't be getting into these ones. Well, maybe the top right one. But anything I'm not covering here, I'm going to try and put it on a YouTube channel because there's so much content to cover. And I think anyone who'd like to check it out and give me a subscribe lets me know you're interested and lets me know that I can make this stuff and share it. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about 3 things here. First one is a logo reveal, and the second one is condensation, and third one are infection systems. I think all 3 of these are things that people may want to do initially, or at least once you become more familiar with the particle system, come back to this and get your head around it. So we're not going to be like, going through each setup, building it from scratch, but because I'd need another hour or so. But we'll see what we can do with this logo reveal first. So we're going to be talking about a different emitter, a mesh emitter, which allows us to feed in geometry, and then we can do some fun things with another modifier called surface attract. Flocking is a really powerful modifier, and I think field conditions allow you to art direct the flow. And we'll dive into another condition called time as well. So let's jump into C4D. And I'll show you the final result. Let's just do that first. So yeah, you can see the final result here. And it's quite a nice organic flow that we've got going on. So I'm going to jump over to C4D now, and we will just find the files. Actually, let's just build something from scratch. I'm going to grab an Illustrator file. And then, I don't know if you know this, you can just pretty much drag them in, and C4D will then create this import dialog. I'm going to leave the scale like it is, but you could scale it up right here within the dialog. Now, when you create this, the camera's kind of going to handily zoom in for you, but you'll see that this is, if we make a cube, this is quite small in comparison. So we can come over to the Illustrator file that we have here and just scale it up, give it a bit more height, and why not some more, bit of depth. Okay, so I'll delete the cube because we don't really need that. And if you wanted to, you could actually make this editable by pressing C. And revealing the hierarchy, we have a spline and just a regular old extrude object. So if I take this out of the hierarchy, this it might be due to the way that the Illustrator file is designed, but the registration point is over here. So to get this back to world 0, we can quickly press Shift-C and type geom. And the geometry axis capsule is your friend here. So if we press Shift and Enter, that's going to make it a child of the spline, making everything snap back into position. What I might want to do is just kind of zero out some of these coordinates. I don't want to really see that this is scale 16, so I'm going to freeze that, and then just click here on the P, which highlights all these properties. If you click into the field and type 0 or whatever you want it to be, hold Control or Command, click Enter, it's going to now update all those other fields. So it's an oldie but a goodie, that tip. So we've got this Maxon logo mark that we can now play with. So with our geometry selected, you could come up to here, simulate emitters mesh, or I've got it in my layout already here, so I'm just going to create a mesh emitter. And because I have the geometry selected, the mesh emitter is going to already put in the logo here. So let's just call this Maxon logo, just so it's a bit nicer. Oops, logo. Oh. And so we have our mesh emitter right here, and our particle group is automatically created. So we're going to emit on maybe the surface of this. We'll do a shot. We'll add some zeros on, and we'll see if that's good enough for us. In the properties, I'm going to come over to here and turn off the speed. I just want them to live on the surface of the logo. So I'm going to just go forward one frame, and you can see we've got these particles born on here. I might add another 0 on, and we'll come back into properties and change the color of these particles to be the red that we're dealing with there. So let's hide the logo. Press Shift F to go back, G one frame. So now we've got this logo shape, all these particles are here. And this is a good start. This is a good start. We can do stuff with this. But what if, and you may be asking this as well, what if I wanted to animate my logo? What if I want to move this around and do some stuff with it, like rotate it maybe? So let's just go forward 20 frames, and we'll get it back to our end state. And to the beginning, we'll just rotate this like so. Now, let's enable the particle group and see what happens. And, yeah, so we've got our particles being born at this point, and they're not coming along for the ride. This is no fun. We want to change this. Now, we need our logo, or whatever object is moving, to be dynamic, because the particles are part of the dynamic system, right? So we need to add a collider tag. And now this can be seen by various other modifiers. One of them is called surface attract. So if we add this in here, and rewind and play, yeah, still nothing's happening. And that's so simple. All we need to do is come in here and apply the object velocity to the particles. So what we're doing is it's just looking to see what's happening with the object. Is it moving? And then just give it the particles that motion too. So let's hide the logo, and we'll rewind and play. And now we have animation. And this is cool. This opens up a lot of possibilities. In fact, I'm going to digress and just jump into this scene here. So in this scene, I have some motex, but this could be anything you think of, right? It's important to put the text under a connect object so that particles don't just see the first letter, they'll see the whole object. And what we could do then is mix in our regular MoGraph workflow. If we just play this through, we can add various like other rotations and positions and things like that. And I think because I'm doing something as well to lock the particles on so they don't, I'm going to just temporarily disable this thing, and I'll come back to it in a second. So we'll let this play through, and there you go. Okay, so now it's thought about it, right? So we've got our logo or whatever we want animated in. And then I'm going to do something. This little checkbox here allows, it's called Simulate Before Generators. So it allows the particles to kind of keep up with the geometry. Otherwise, you'd end up with a frame lag. And if you're tracing particles or doing something like that, you want to consider putting that one on as well. So that's just found in the project settings, in the simulation tab, in the scene sub-tab of that. Quite an important one to know. So let's turn on our particles. And we want that surface attract on as well, because we've got the apply object velocity on there. So I'm going to hide the particles here for now. And sure enough, now they come along, and we can then start mixing in maybe some turbulence. But I'm also using a field in here, so to get it to come along when the field passes through. This is a bit out of control. So now we're going to reduce some of the energy by adding quite a strong amount of friction. And they should sort of hug more closely to the actual geometry, and then we can just have a bit of fun with some color mapping and just make them look a bit prettier. So this is just adjusting the color based on the Z position. So yeah, I found this quite fun. I think it offers a lot more scope for other examples. So let's go back to where we were. And at this point, we can talk about field conditions and things like that. So yeah, let's just see what we've got here. So in this field condition, I have a whole load of things going on. I've decided to group it because I want to use it elsewhere. And I'm using a spherical field. If I just click onto that, you'll be able to see. And this is kind of animating in. The spherical field is also using the random field to break it up. Nested underneath the spherical field is an attractor force with a linear field as well. And this is set to a very small negative amount, and it's just very gently, you'll be able to see it here, just very gently pulling these particles away from the surface. So let's just click onto the particle group, and no, I want to click onto the condition, and there's a thing called condition highlighting. This is why we have like this sort of faded color here, and then they become slightly stronger when the condition is true. And again, in the project settings, Control or Command D, in the Particles tab, this is called selection highlighting. They might have changed the name, but selection highlighting, that's what it's called. So if we turn that off, turn it on, you can see what's going on. So we got a flock modifier happening. And we're going to talk about flock in a bit, but what this is going to do is essentially look at the proximity of all the other particles and try and not make them overlap. So it's going to push them apart. And so let me just zoom in here, and you'll see when we enable that, they'll kind of, it's a bit close. They'll kind of just as the field comes through and the conditions met, they'll sort of push away a little bit. And it's getting a bit chuggy at the moment, but I'm going to so we can see this a bit faster. Let's just drop this down. You can always bring it back at another point. So yeah, they'll just push away, and you can see we're getting these really nice kind of organic patterns happening. I have a math just to say, right, add a constant, keep adding to the x position. Just keep pulling them away in the negative x. So then they're going to go away in that direction that we've defined. And so once that's happening, they're just going to move off. And this is a nice little breakup. But then I've said I want to clear the frame at some point. So that's why I'm using this time condition. So whenever the scene time it gets to greater than frame 150, then do something. Do an additional bit of math pulling away, but also use this sort of linear field as well. So and then a bit of turbulence just for a bit more natural motion. So again, putting it all together, we have it pulling away and it will fly off. And actually, while we're here, let's talk about the chance of something happening. This is interesting as well. It's kind of similar to the tolerance as well. Like a lower value would mean we're not getting as much happening here. So we lower the tolerance. And a high tolerance value will get these particles, more of them going off, like so. So you can play around with different looks just by adjusting the slider here. But at the same time as well, you can say, well, is there a chance that some of these particles do not meet this condition? And that can kind of help blend a few effects as well. Because it's going to keep trying to do it. It'll probably get them eventually, given enough time. But you can see there that we get less and less happening. So, another thing to be aware of and something that you can play around with. So I think with that one, let's just check what else we've got. Let's just come back here. Yeah, I mean, it looks like this. So as you can guess, I didn't make it reveal. I did the classic thing of find your end frame and then work backwards, and just once it's all cached or rendered or whatever, you can do that in post. So next, we have condensation. Kind of fun. I'm not going to say that this is like a final rig or anything like that, but it's actually using multiple emitters, a bit more flocking, and then a thing called predator-prey as well, and some kind of classic tools as well that kind of help get us to where the drips are. So a little close-up of that. You can see a bit of clumping, a bit of particles moving away. And for a quick shot, this could be quite useful. So let's jump into C4D. And I'll find a few files that we can talk about. So let's talk about these static drops first. So this is just giving us some coverage on the can. And we haven't talked about, so we have talked about mesh emitters, but we haven't talked about things like property maps. So what I'm doing here with the property map, I've created a vertex map on the can geometry using a random field and shader field and things like that. And so now the emitter is going to look for the parts where it's yellow and give us a bigger radius, and where it's red, it will be a smaller radius. So we can get some variety here. So another way of adding variety to anything, really. So let's take a look at the can, and you can see we get this interesting sort of pattern happening here. So what else have we got? I want to talk about setting up the drips. There's a couple, there's so many ways of doing this. Like, we've got our mesh emitter, the emitter, it's actually using a polygon selection to restrict what it's doing, and I'll show you that as well. So I've set up a polygon selection tag with using fields. If we go forwards one frame, and also make sure the particle group's on, what this is doing, if I come out of the camera, and do I have it filtered off? Maybe. No. Let's just show the linear field. There we go. So if I come around here, you can see that I don't want to necessarily have particles on the backside here where the camera's not going to see it, so we'll just cut those off, less processing time, and we can just work with the ones that we're actually interested in. So from there, let's dive back into the camera. We can take another emitter called reproduce and reproduce particles on top of the ones that are already born. So if we enable the group and the reproduce, what this is going to do is create a particle for every particle, and it's going to keep doing that, constantly doing that, which can be dangerous, so you have to be careful how you use this. But what we'll end up is with a trail. Now, I'm using a data mapper specifically for the reproduce group, so we could probably just name that with an R, so we know that it's for reproduce. This data mapper is only applying to the reproduced particles. So it's the way of structuring things once again. If we enable this using this kind of curve, we're taking an age percentage, something that I've defined in the reproduce thing here in the properties. So we have a life expectation. So that from there we can get a value between 0 and 1 or whatever, and map that to our radius. So with any luck, when we press play, we'll end up with something that looks like a trail. And these will end up looking like, I guess, big blobs. So you could actually put this in a volume builder and do something like that, mesh it together, which gives, so this is like the old look here. Oh, I didn't like that. Anyway. It's just processing a texture for some reason. So yeah, you can see, this is another point to note as well. We might as well talk about it while we're here. So Redshift allows you to just render stuff. You don't need to worry about having like an object tag on the particle if you just want to hit play and render stuff. But sometimes I don't want to see like that an original particle. So in this instance, we could, I guess you could hide the group, but that's going to hide everything, right? You'd need to then start fussing around with traffic lights and all that kind of stuff. So simply just take a Redshift render tag, and it's going to default to disabled. So that means those are hidden, and you can just focus on the ones that you're interested in. So these now have a sphere instance, but they could have anything that we have in this list. It could also be custom geometry and a material as well. But like I said, this is just one setup, and we're not necessarily going to use it. Let's see about how we could maybe take something a bit more MoGraphy and go from there. So let's disable the reproduce and all these three and come here. And let's just talk about this one. So with a tracer, I am tracing the particle group. You don't trace the emitter, you trace the particle group, because that's where the points are. So if we rewind and play, and you can see now that we're getting a trail on every one of these particles. You can do some interesting things with that, with a bit of displacement to get a bit of wiggling, or you could even go back into your system and maybe make a bit of turbulence or something like that, but we're just trying to make something kind of simple and quick. So this tracer then goes into a volume builder, and I've linked it in here, or it's actually a child, and you just set that up in this kind of way. But the most important setting is to scale per segment. If you don't do that, then it's going to look at the whole spline, and then we won't end up with these lovely little trails that we have, which are very easy to adjust with manipulating the spline. So you can then mesh that and control the thickness of this with the voxel range threshold. So we can adjust that as well and smooth it out, or you could smooth it out with a subdivision surface, or add subdivisions at render time with a redshift render tag, and then a bit of smoothing, and drop your material on. Let's just add the tag as well, and then instead of smoothing this, I could just come in here and smooth it out this way by adding that. So again, this is another way of working. I'm trying to present a few ideas, because you just never know which is the right one. There isn't a right one. It's whatever works at the same time. So we will go into a new scene to say, can we adjust the drips a bit more? So let's do something with these static particles and see if we can use those drips that are falling down to kind of make them react, So I'm going to enable this field condition and a flock, and what this is going to do is wherever, I've dragged in the mesh of those drips. So wherever that is, make the particles maybe scatter away a bit, and give us some bits of empty bits of where this is going. So is that going to play? Yeah, it's going to play for me. And I've got the condition highlighted because I wanted to show you, if I just come over to default presets here, I wanted to show you the conditions that's going on here. So you can see where these darker green ones are happening. That's when this is true. And these ones are going to try and move away. And we'll end up with some kind of fun effect. Now this looks a bit too much, it's moving a bit too fast perhaps, so we can put some friction in here. Another thing that you'll notice is that they're going to fly off and not follow the can anymore. So this is why the surface attract is such a useful one. It's looking at the dynamic geometry. You can enable this, and now it's going to follow along with that surface. So these particles shouldn't fly off anymore. You see, they'll stick to that surface. And so anything as well, I've said, some of these particles could even be killed. We'll give a small chance of some of them. If they're in the way of this big thing that's traveling along, don't push them away, just kill them. So we've got that happening now. So if we come back out, back into camera here, and you should see some little areas forming where it's clearing a path, which I thought was quite fun, and obviously something that could be refined further. So we can then come into our growing group. So it's starting to build up. We're getting a few more things going on here, and it's just jumped over to that because I was mid-frame. So everything is born on the first frame. So if we come back to here, we'll see what's going on. Now, I've got a new set of particles being born here, and what these are going to do is travel down the surface, but use this modifier called predator-prey. So we've set up a system. You need a couple of groups to get this to work, but it's going to look for particles and either absorb or attract or repel. So what's going to happen with any luck is when it hits a particle, it's going to say, right, I'm going to put you into a new group, and we're going to come a bigger thing. And I thought, well, we can then mesh that, and then we'll end up with these bigger blobs that have started off being kind of small. So I've got this volume builder that just needs the growing group. We'll add that in and adjust the radius and the voxel size just to get it looking right. But the other thing to do here, if we just come in to our default camera, you can see that we've got a little drop forming around here. This is then controlled. You can make these, you're never going to go to ridiculously big, but I like having this kind of level of control, just to sort of see which kind of size drops we want to create. So these drops will gradually just get bigger and grow as we as they flow down, which, yeah, is a nice effect. So combining it all together, you end up with something that looks quite pretty. And again, like I said, not like a final solution, but something workable, hopefully. So I think, yeah, these have all been kind of cached out, so it means that we can then kind of scrub the timeline. But I guess because I don't have the trails cached, maybe that'll do something such strange. So let's just look at the final render here. Yeah, and I guess, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing a lot of things that can be fixed, but it's interesting just to kick it off and see where we can take it. I keep pressing escape, I don't need to do that. So the next thing, let's just see, we're good. We just quickly talk about infection systems, again, with a bit more predator-prey. And if we've got a little bit of time, caching and rendering out to the viewport renders on the left. It's just so quick to do once you've got it cached. So I can show you how you can clean up the viewport to do that. So yeah, let's go into C4D from there. So yeah. All right. Infections. Let's see how we start this off. So we have one emitter, basic emitter. It's just going to do one particle and it's going to try and hit something. So I'm going to make a mesh emitter based on the surface. Let's do that. Drag this here. So we'll just call this the mesh. Oh, and let's just take on the surface a shot, quite a lot. And we don't want any speed to this. So we'll just see what happens there. Okay, so I might just display the radius as well, just so we can see what's going on. And then we'll set up this predator-prey thing. So we'll add this in, and it's going to look for a couple of groups. So we'll take our shot, and we'll take the mesh here, and just fire these in. So now, if we just rewind and play, you'll see that something's starting to happen. Once a predator particle touches one of the prey, then it's going to kind of make it move away. And these are things like are controlled by this flee radius and the pursuit radius. So if you can imagine, like, it might be easier to visualize with this example here. If you imagine this is like a predator particle, the red one, and it has like this sort of radius around it, where anything within this scope is now considered something that it can go after. And similarly, a prey particle would have a radius around it as well, and it's now checking for predator particles, and should I be avoiding it and moving away? So that in itself can become quite intense in terms of calculation if you have your radius too big, because it's checking, and all this data can come out of control. So I would say just keep an eye on the radius values that you're using. And similarly, flocking has a very similar interface to this as well. I'm not sure if I'll have time to cover that, but we'll see what we can do. But yeah, so once something has happened to these particles, they can be converted. So you can convert the prey to a predator. And we'll increase the sort of contact radius of what that's happening. And you can see now that we get this almost, it could be disintegration or something like that. But then you could convert them and put them into a group. This could be the predator group. Let's just try that and see what happens. And do these have a different color? They do. Okay, that's what I wanted to set up. And we're not seeing that yet because we need to sort of say, well, on contact, transfer to the predator. I think. Oh, this is what makes this up, but I'm going to get the dialogue right. So transfer the properties of the prey onto of the predator onto the prey. So if we rewind and play, yeah, we're getting these red particles now because the predator particles are already red. So let's hide the geometry. And you'll see that we're getting something kind of interesting happening here. Now, you could also take out the speed. Let's reduce that right down. and the flee radius as well, right? So that they don't move off. In fact, I wonder if I could just kill that completely and just see what happens. Okay, so it's a lot of playtime, really, just figuring it out and just sort of seeing what's going on. Now, yeah, we're kind of getting a slower kind of growing effect, and could I even hide these just to see what's going on? So you could then start to almost reveal a surface, and if we give ourselves more time, that's eventually going to kind of reveal this. So we'll move on to maybe a different state that I have this built out in, and we'll just see what this one's all about. So yeah, once you've got that going, I'm just adding a few modifiers into the mix, and so the math is just adding to the velocity. It's just moving off in the x and y direction. So it's pulling these particles away, and then we can give a bit of turbulence for a bit more natural motion, which is looking kind of nice. And then I'm just adding a rotate on here as well. So all these forces, you can find them in the forces menu. We haven't got time to get into field forces, I don't think, but you can actually build your own forces, which is incredibly powerful. But these ones are just here, and they're kind of quite friendly and easy to set up. So we have some friction here, just to control the speed of everything, and really allow us to see the flow that is being created by the turbulence in conjunction with the rotation. And then a little bit of color mapping, just based on a very small kind of velocity speed. I think this kind of looks quite pretty, the way it's kind of coming across. So, and again, if you hide one of these, you'll end up with like this revealing or disintegration type effect, which is stuff I see a lot. So I think it's useful to share. Looking at the end state of this, I think, we're going to try and just cover rendering in the viewport. And my cache files, they're probably not there. Let's just relink those. Hopefully I've got them. So I'll just see if I've got them in my presentation here. Cache. Oh, that would be, maybe. Don't know if it needs that one. Oh. Let's just see. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this should still give us the effect anyway. If we were to imagine that this was, what we wanted to render, and unfortunately I don't have the cache file with me, so I can't do that. But let's just switch over. What I've done with the viewport here, viewport render, I'm just filtering out to the particle, and in fact we may need a generator on here as well. Let me just see what we've got in our viewport. Yeah, generator is also needed to do this. I think when they're uncached, it's just a particle. It's sort of strange in that regard. Yeah, so particle is needed for this. So when they're uncached, it's generator, because it's still, I guess, a generator. So we can just quickly set up, we don't need to save this, but we could set up an MP4 and a range of frames. And, once you're done with that, we've gone through, filtered off everything, so the viewport's nice and clean, and we're only focusing on the particles. And then just Shift R. I don't need to save this, but you'll see that these will render quite quickly, and just for getting them, prevised or whatever, then you can do that. So that's one thing that I quickly wanted to cover. And if we turn off maybe the caches here, and go back to these, let's just see. So there's a mode on the group which it's called override the display color. So we can override that. I like the direction of the particles, the velocity direction. I think that just looks really cool. But this will not render. This is a viewport only type thing. So just to cover that off, one of the developers, Basti, showed me a quick setup that we can do in Redshift. So it's just a few nodes. So this is just got this material here. So it's just a few nodes. So what we're doing is I just step through it quite quickly. So we're grabbing a vector user data. We're grabbing from the presets the velocity. Now if you just feed this in, as is. Let's just go, and I'm in the viewport render, so I'm just going to switch over to Redshift. So if you feed that in, it's going to be it's going to be blown out. This doesn't look very good. It's not what I'm seeing here. So I can then normalize the values and give myself like an absolute value for each color and put that in here. And then now we're getting this really really pretty look, I think. It's not something that you want to maybe put on every project, but for a burst of color or something, it's quite fun. Now, why do we want to remember all of this? No, we don't want to remember all of this. So what we can do is select them all. We can group this. So you could just create a group, or you do Alt-G. So we group these nodes. Let's give this a name. So we could call this particle velocity, right? Oops. And we'll come over to assets, convert this to an asset, and this can be in our global preferences. It could be just within the scene, not very useful. Or you could put it in your own database. It could be something that you share within the company or whatever. So save that. We don't need this anymore. We can press Shift-C, or we can just double-click in here and type in particle, and we have it. We've got our own nodes that we've built up. We've got our particle velocity. So if we just come over here, like this, and then connect this up, there it is. That's that system, that thing that we built together, and you can put a few of those together and save some time. So I think, again, building up your own sets of assets or your own sets of even forces and things like that you like, and just saving them into the asset browser is just a crucial thing. And finally, I think while we're on the asset browser, if you want to go away and learn more about particles, check out the Cineversity training that's available. Shout out to Noseman for all he's done. And also, if we search here in particles, right, and just come into this category, there are a whole load of presets that are ready to be played with. So definitely dive in here and learn more about this new system. So yeah, for version 1 of Particles, I think it's pretty capable and a lot of fun to use. And I think that's all I got. I want to say a big thank you to Maxon for having me out. Thanks to my wife and kids for letting me come out. And thank you for everybody here and everybody watching online. My name's Andy Needham. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Andy. We do have time for like 2 questions. If not, Andy will be in the back along with our training team. So if you wanted to dive deep into particles, he'd be available. Question up here in the front.
Andy, it's great to see you.
Hey.
So Ocean Sim in the reel.
That Ocean Sim was done by some very talented people. They were using Houdini, but we brought the sim into Cinema 4D with like the volume underneath to give it like the look, and I set up the materials in Redshift, and that was all rendered out from Cinema 4D. So. No. Do you want to?
Well, I mean, you can use the fluid solver, and you can also attach it to other plugins. So if you're using anything that deforms a surface, you can attach particles to that. So if you're looking for like white waves off of like a Houdini sim or anything like that, you'd be able to attach it to that mesh.
Yeah.
So doing things like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Also, a good thing to go back and play with when you have a moment with our training team too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Another question in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about grouping nodes as an asset as well as forces?
Yeah, so this probably needs a little quick demonstration, but for example...
we can take the time. Phil doesn't mind.
If you had some forces that you liked, let's just take the ones from here. Like, I like this turbulence, I like these 4. So let's imagine that these are what we want. You don't want to just drag this into the asset browser. You want to put it under a null, and nice forces. And then this can go into the asset browser, like so. Save that into your preferences or whatever, same thing, and choose OK. And there you go. We've got that. We can then put that into a new scene, and we've got our nice forces just exactly as we set them up. So, yeah.
Pretty painless. Awesome. Thanks so much. Hang out on the internet. We will be back here in about 7 minutes with our next presenter, Phil Roberts. Still keeping it across the pond, your neighbor. Awesome. Thanks again, and Phil will be in the back. Thank you, everybody. Good job. Sorry.